The NFL draft is over. It's once again time to rank every team in the NFL after the 2024 NFL draft from the worst, number 32, to the best in the NFL, the number one team in football after the draft. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to get in the comments section and let me know what you think of my NFL power rankings. This is how I feel about your favorite team after the NFL draft, discussing their current roster, the vibe of their team, and the potential of their team in 2024, now that we have the core of the roster for this season. Don't forget to subscribe. We're almost at 47K, so join the BLV community and subscribe for more NFL content, including regular power rankings and NFL rankings videos, all off-season long. Let's begin at number 32 with the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion, the Denver Broncos. Yes, I have the Denver Broncos at number 32, and it all starts with who is going to be playing quarterback for the Denver Broncos. It could be Jared Stidham. It could be Zachary Wilson. It might also be their first-round pick, Bo Nix. And I have to strongly lean towards they wouldn't have picked Bo Nix if they didn't believe he was going to start this year. And they're going to have a forced hand in playing Bo Nix because Sean Payton believes in him and he believes that he will be the franchise guy. My overall problem with that pick was the fact that this is the worst team in the NFL. Like, if Bo Nix is not really good right away, like, even if he's just okay, this is not the team. This is not the infrastructure to be drafting a quarterback into. This is a rebuild. Like, they got rid of Justin Simmons for a reason, not only to save money, but because they were not going to be contending, right? Yeah, they've got a couple good players. I don't think their O-line is half bad. I think it's fairly average. I think that Javonte Williams can still run the rock, and Sean Payton will call a pretty nice offensive scheme overall. He'll call a good game. But Bo Nix is a rookie with really only Courtland Sutton to rely upon in the passing game. Everyone else, Mims included, is a complete wild card. We don't really know what we're getting at the wide receiver position, especially after moving on from Jerry Jeudy. And I've never been the biggest Jerry Jeudy guy. You know that. So the offense with a rookie quarterback at the helm is likely going to be pretty run heavy. Probably not explosive. Bo Nix is not the type of talent, especially adjusting from the Oregon system to an NFL system that's going to be more middle of the field, play action, downfield concepts. Like, yes, he can read a defense. Yes, he makes good decisions. Yes, he's fairly athletic, has a decent arm, fairly accurate. All those things. But I just can't imagine this offense being any better than a bottom 5 unit. They just do not have the skill talent. And I wasn't extremely, impressed by Russell Wilson and this offense last year. And I don't see Bo Nix even being better than Russell Wilson. Maybe he'll work within the system better and read the defense out and run the play properly. But he does not have the talent that Russell Wilson possessed. So I just don't see how this offense is going to be any good. And we translate to the defensive side of the football. And yes, they added John Franklin Myers through a trade, which I like that addition. I think he'll add another big body and a nice little pass rusher to Zach Allen in the interior. Vance Joseph doesn't do a half bad job, but it's not like they have great pass rushers. They really don't. Linebacker position is meh. Secondary, outside of Pat Surtain, who might be a top 3 corner in football, is pretty mid as well. So we're just talking about a roster from top to bottom that has very few elite talents and a lot of players across the roster that are just not really starters. Edge position, secondary at safety, possible corner position or nickel position. Like, the offense isn't going to be any good. The defense is probably average at best. I just don't see where this team is going to win, how this team is going to win. I don't see it in my mind. So that's why I have them last. Now, maybe they'll shock me, surprise me, prove me wrong. But they are right now the team that I project to be the worst in football. Maybe I'm just underappreciating and underestimating Sean Payton. That could be true. But I just don't see it with this rookie quarterback and with this personnel. This is a retooling year, which I think ends up with them picking very high in next year's draft. At number 31, the Washington Commanders. Now, I recently brought up the Commanders as one of the more improved rosters in football. And a lot of the fans are going to watch that video and say, I agree. And then they're going to watch this video and say, Mitch, what are you talking about? You just had us in the most improved video. Here's my problem, though, right? They're still not very good. Like, they made improvements. I think they got better on defense in a variety of locations, including the linebacker position with Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, and company. The edge position with Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, Clelin Ferrell. I think that they improved the secondary depth, I would call it, especially at corner with guys like Michael Davis. And then on the offensive side, they already had a couple good receivers. Austin Eckler is an interesting addition there. Is he actually better than Antonio Gibson at this point? I don't know, honestly. The offensive line is still pretty bad. And this is where I circle back and I say, yeah, the Commanders have improved certain positions. And I think their defense especially will be more competitive this year, thanks to Dan Quinn's coaching, thanks to improvement in the pass rush, post Chase Young and Sweat and all that stuff leaving last year. They didn't have any edge rushers, right? And I do think that they'll just play more sound football. So they'll be more creative on that side of the ball. They'll make more stops, more turnovers, more sacks, more pressure, all that stuff from the defense. Offensively, I question whether Cliff Kingsbury is an upgrade over Eric Bieniemy. I really do. I question whether, as a rookie, Jaden Daniels will be better than Sam Howell was last year, because I actually felt like Sam Howell, yes, up and down, erratic, was pretty good at times last year. Won them some games, did lose them other games, but with the protection in front of him, it's going to be really difficult. Like, the offensive line is not much better than it was last year, and they gave up a ton of sacks, right? The run game, because of the offensive line, I can't see being explosive or reliable. So it's really going to come down to how good is Jaden Daniels right away. And as a rookie, I don't really know. Like, I wasn't overly high on him coming out of the draft. I definitely thought that Drake May was the better alternative at number 2. But hey, he could maybe be better than I expect right away. I definitely feel like in terms of age, experience, and composure, he is there. But learning a new offense, all that stuff, how is it going to look? I just have a lot of questions about the Commanders. I think they'll be one of those bad teams that is actually fairly exciting to watch. They're actually pointed in the right direction. This is certainly not a season where the Commanders will win a lot of games, but I could see them being competitive in a lot of games, which is why it's a really tricky ranking for me. I could see you ranking them somewhere in the bottom of this list, but at number 31 is where I lie still, just because they really don't have enough of elite players still, like on the offensive line, the pass rush, outside of the interior. The corner position is completely suspect. And Dan Quinn, will he be able to really run the defense he wants to run like he did in Dallas right away? Not sure how that's going to look. There's a lot of questions about this team. So, yeah, I have them at 31, but this was a tough one. I could have put multiple teams in this position. I might actually make a video about the Commanders because I find them very, very interesting this year. And they made a ton of moves, but how many of them actually made them better is a little bit of a question. Like, they added a ton of players, but that doesn't always make you better right away. It could make you better in the future, though. At number 30, the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, part of me just wanted them to not be last on this list. So that's part of it. for sure. But the Carolina Panthers are definitely better than they were. And when you look at their team, like comparing them to the Commanders, for example, their quarterbacks in year 2 as opposed to year 1. I like the offensive-minded guy that they brought in as their head coach, Dave Canales, from Tampa. I think he's done a great job with quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson. I think that he's going to support him with a nice little system. And then they supported him with offensive line, right? Washington doesn't have an offensive line. Robert Hunt, $100 million man, right? Damian Lewis out of Seattle, solid guard as well. And they've already got pretty talented tackles as well as a solid center. So their offensive line will be pretty solid. And then the running backs, they have 3 of them that they can work with, whether it's Hubbard, Sanders, or now they just picked one in the 2nd round or 3rd round, was it? Brooks out of Texas, arguably the best back in the draft. They've got talent at receiver now. They upgraded there with Deontay Johnson, and they just added Xavier Legette in the 1st round, the last pick of the 1st round. So they have multiple receivers now that should go out there and perform. Adam Thielen is still there, who was their best receiver last year. So there's a lot more supporting Bryce Young. And you would think with another offseason, a new offensive mind, a new system, recalibrating Bryce Young, he should be better. The offense should be a lot better. And the defense is competitive. Like it wasn't horrible last year. It kept them in a lot of games. But they did, of course, lose Brian Burns, one of their key pieces. But they did bring in Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Wonham to help replace that at the edge position. Of course, they still have a beast in the middle in Derek Brown. They've got a lot of solid pieces. Josie Jewell, Shaq Thompson still there. They've got pretty good safeties. I especially love the Fuller pickup. J.C. Horn, if he's healthy, is a number 1 corner in this league. They've got a lot of pieces across their defense where you're like, that guy's pretty good. That guy's not bad. He's definitely not below average. There's just not a lot of guys on their defense where it's like, he's a stud, he's a stud. There's maybe 2 of those on this defense. But as long as they can just be, more fluid, more consistent on offense, I think their running game will be a huge part of this, especially with that new offensive line. And then protecting Bryce Young, I think, is going to play a key factor, along with just having receivers that can actually make plays. That also helps a lot. So this is a team that's in a much better position to win games this year. I mean, last year, they were by far the worst team in football. Like, they had 2 wins, and they were both in the last second. So, they were really bad. But now they're a lot better. At number 29, the New York G-Men. The Giants are well coached. I still believe that they're going to be a good, solid foundation in terms of the scheme on offense, the scheme on defense is going to be quality. I like the defensive coordinator hire, although I was always a Wink Martindale fan personally. I do think that Brian Daboll is going to cook something up with Daniel Jones this year, similarly to 2 years ago. And I think having a number 1 receiver extremely increases my hope for Daniel Jones in the offense. I also just really liked the offensive line decisions that they made. They increased the floor of the offensive line with pickups like Jermaine Illuminor and Runyon and others, right? Evan Neal doesn't have to step in and be the right tackle if he's an absolute disaster like he has been. Maybe he can take a step into the guard position or something like that. Andrew Thomas, when healthy, is really, really good. They've got a young center there. So I look at this offense, and I just feel like the floor has risen with the offensive line. The receiving core, Malik Neighbors is going to make plays. He is going to be an explosive element they haven't had since OBJ. They've got other guys that can contribute there, like Hyatt and Slayton, right? And Wan'Dale Robinson. These guys will be better as 2s, 3s, and 4s as opposed to 1s, right? And then in the running back spot, right, Devin Singletary will be fine. He's a professional, right? They also drafted a running back. That's pretty interesting to me. But it's not Saquon. But I do feel like with Daniel Jones running the ball, getting a number 1 receiver, they're at least going to be not a disaster on offense. And then defensively, I actually think they could be quite good. Like, depending on how the secondary shapes up, because obviously they have questions at corner. But Banks, I really loved coming out of the draft. I thought he looked good as a rookie. He's ready to step in as a CB1. Kind of concerned about losing McKinney, who I just don't understand why they let him go. But they did draft a safety that I quite liked out of Minnesota, Nubin, one of the better safeties in the class. They also drafted a nickel corner that could step in right away and play. And then the linebackers already pretty good. The defensive line, Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns is going to be potentially dangerous along with Thibodeau on the opposite side. So, I think that front seven is going to be really solid. I think they're going to be able to rush the quarterback when those guys are healthy. And then I think they're going to be pretty solid against the run. My concern is their coverage, but I just see this team as a better defensive team this year, as a slightly better offensive team, depending on Daniel Jones' health and things of that nature. And they could be closer to what they were when they made the playoffs. It wouldn't shock me if they were much better in terms of winning those close games like they were in 2022. But they could also be somewhere in between, where they're winning a couple more games, but they're not exactly there because they don't exactly have the talent yet. So, or Daniel Jones could just not be it, right? Drew Lock is going to be competing for this job for a reason. So, at number 29, I have the Giants. They're another one of those teams where I feel like on paper, they're just not there for me, but at the same time, I see elements that could make them pretty successful. So, they're at number 29. At number 28, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, to me, have a relatively decent floor. I don't think they're going to be an atrocious, horrible team as long as Kyler Murray is playing. Because I think Kyler Murray is a good enough quarterback. I think you would put him somewhere in the top 15 where he can win games with his talent, with his ability to scramble, extend plays, throw the football. And now that you give them Marvin Harrison Jr., it's going to make them potentially dangerous on offense. I like some of the pieces there. I think the offensive line is very underrated. I really like what they did with the offensive line. Jonah Williams coming in. I think that Paris Johnson will be better in year 2. I think their interior is underrated, and they added to that in the draft. And then James Conner, along with, I believe it was Benson who they drafted. Those two are going to be a dynamic duo in the backfield, speed and power. Kyler, though, chucking that thing to Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, that's a great 1-2, combo. And then I believe they have Wilson on the outside as well, who's pretty interesting. Don't sleep on Greg Dortch, who's also pretty intriguing. I like him as an underrated baller. So the Cardinals will have a pretty interesting, fun offense. Where I'm concerned about them is the defense. And although that, Gannon is a defensive guy, I just still don't see the talent. Yeah, they drafted a first-round edge rusher. They signed a bunch of, middling, maybe they're starters, maybe they're backup type defensive linemen, guys like Justin Jones, right? They signed a Mac Wilson at linebacker who might be a little underrated, might help them a little bit, but he's not going to, move the dial for me. The secondary, again, signing guys like Sean Murphy-Bunting, where it's yeah, it's probably an upgrade. I like what they did in the draft, adding a couple of guys in the middle rounds. Guys that I really like, including the corner out of Rutgers, Melton, I believe. And then safety, they're actually pretty good as long as Baker sticks around. Thompson is still there. I think they're a little bit better in terms of talent on all 3 levels of their defense. It's just still they were not a good defense last year at all. They were one of the worst in football. And once teams kind of got past their creativity of the coaching staff, giving them different looks at the line of scrimmage, blitzing from all angles, dropping out different players, things like that, teams were just they're not that good. They're just not talented enough. They can't really rush 4 and get home. They can't really cover man-to-man on islands consistently. There's just not a lot that you can do with that talent level of a defense. And the offense is good, sure, but it's not going to be dominant. So I could see the Cardinals being a pretty middling 6-7 win team at best. I just don't see how they have a very high ceiling. But I don't see how they lose, 13 games. I just think Kyler Murray is too good for that. So, yeah, they're a safe 28. They're going to be somewhere between 28 and 24 probably this year. And then next year is probably when you expect them to really be a lot better. At number 27, the New England Patriots. The Patriots are relatively similar to the Cardinals in terms of, I think their floor is fairly decent because of how good their defense is, but their offense is just a complete wild card. But I also believe that they have a much higher ceiling than people actually want to suggest. And I'll explain that in a second. But the Patriots are at 27 for the reasons that the Cardinals are at 28. One side of the ball is really good, and it's going to make them competitive. The Patriots defense, by the end of the year last year, was arguably the best defense in the NFL. And their run defense was the best in the NFL. And that was without their best pass rusher and their best corner. So yes, Bill Belichick leaves, but they get those pieces back. They only added pieces, this offseason in the draft, in free agency. And you look at, how deep their defensive line is. They just re-signed Christian Barmore. They have Matt Judon, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Dietrich Wise, Keon White, etc., Devon Godshaw. The linebacker position is very solid, led by Jawan Bentley. The secondary is deep. Jonathan Jones behind Gonzalez, along with Marcus Jones coming back from injury. There's some young guys that I really like there, along with Peppers and Duggar at safety. Like, this is one of the best defenses and has very few weaknesses. They can attack you from all angles. They can play man. They can play zone. They can blitz. They're creative. Like, Gerard Mayo is going to have a good defense there. He was doing a lot of that work for Belichick. The offense is really where you could say they could be shitty, right? Like, bad. But they could also be pretty, interesting if Drake May plays and he's actually really good, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, how much of this last year was the fact that they were playing Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, and that those guys, like, Mac was broken and Bailey Zappi was just really bad? Like, how much of that production on offense was the quarterback position? How much of it was the offensive line? How much of it was the receivers? Right? Kendrick Bourne back, hopefully healthy this year. Demario Douglas in year 2 is pretty intriguing. Stevenson healthy. I like the Antonio Gibson addition. They still got Hunter Henry along with Austin Hooper at tight end. The offensive line, I think, is pretty solid. I don't think it's awful by any means. I think that they've got some good players there like Michael Onwenu and Dave Andrews. The left tackle spot is a bit worrisome, but it's not like the entire 5 is bad like the Commanders. So I look at New England and I say, yeah, they don't have a number 1 receiver, but they've got a bunch of guys. They drafted Jalen Polk. They drafted Javon Baker. Hopefully one of those guys can step into a role this year. So, like, they're not going to be explosive or dangerous or a top 10 offense. But what if they were like the 20th best offense in the league instead of the 30th best offense or the 16th best offense in the league? They'd probably win 8 or 9 games. Right? Like, if Drake May is actually going to uplift everybody around him and be that guy that we think he could be in the future, but maybe he is that right now, maybe we're not giving New England enough credit. So this is the team where I'm like, in this bottom 5 or 6, that's why I put them 27 as opposed to 30. Like, yes, I could see where they're really bad. The offense could suck. But at the same time, if Drake May is actually good and he ends up playing, they could actually be, like, pretty interesting. So at number 27, I have the Patriots. At number 26, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are similar to New England. They don't have as good of a defense, clearly, but they have elements of their defense that I think are very interesting. And then the offense has a lot more potential than the Patriots. So obviously, new regime similarly to New England, young quarterback similar to New England. Will Levis is very raw, but you can see a world where Will Levis could be good this year. Like, I look at him and I saw him play Miami and you see him play Pittsburgh and you see him make these throws with the arm strength. He's got great toughness. I like his just bravado to him. Like, I love his presence. He feels like a starting quarterback to me. Like, I could see him being good. He's got Calvin Ridley. He's got DeAndre Hopkins. He's got Treylon Burks. I like the tight end. Like, they've got running backs there. Tony Pollard, Spears. And then the offensive line is very much improved. I already liked elements of it, right? And then you add a center like Lloyd Cushenberry. You add a first-round tackle like J.C. Latham. You never know how good the first-round tackle is going to be right away. And we've seen guys like Evan Neal bust right away. But if he's decent, that provides a pretty solid floor of an offensive line along with Peter Skoronski and Daniel Brunskill. And, like, it's not a bad O-line. So The offense could be a lot of fun. Like, they could be running the ball pretty well, especially with their offensive line coach. They now have a new offensive-minded guy coming from Cincinnati who is the offensive coordinator, who is now their head coach. So their offense should be better. Their system should be, more quarterback-friendly. And then you get to the defensive side of the football where if they're running the ball, they're explosive off-play action, Calvin Ridley separating, D-Hop's making contested grabs down the field. All of a sudden, they could compete with a lot of teams. And then defensively, they've got one of the better secondaries in football. Like, at least, you've got L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Roger McCreary in the nickel spot. You've got a hooker who I like still. Maybe one of their safety spots is a bit suspect. They've got to kind of figure out who that's going to be. But like with Snead there, that just changes their defense, in my opinion. That is the type of trade. He's a CB1. He's going to be able to cover the receiver, the best receiver on the other team consistently. That's going to make everyone else better. Chidobe Awuzie is a legit corner too, as long as he stays healthy. McCreary is a legit nickel player. And so you look at their defense and yeah, they still got Jeffrey Simmons, who's a game wrecker up front. They still got Harold Landry, who's a good player. Arden Key is a player I like. They don't have a lot of depth up front. Their linebacker position is very suspect. They drafted a rookie there, a North Carolina, Drake May's teammate. But like they can cover and they could potentially have a pretty inconsistent, but maybe decent pass rush. And then their offense could be pretty inconsistent, but also explosive. I could see them being a run-heavy, play-action, deep ball team. So that could be a lot of fun. So Tennessee is a team that could be all over the place, but I think potentially a lot of fun in 2024. At number 25, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, to me, don't have the ceiling that the Tennessee Titans have, but they have a much higher floor. I could easily see the Raiders landing anywhere between 9 and 6 wins pretty consistently. And if everything goes right, they might make the playoffs and win 10 games. Like the Raiders defense, now that they've added a guy like Wilkins to the interior to take some pressure off of Max Crosby up front to get to the quarterback and also help them stop the run, this makes their defense a lot more fascinating after a defensive year in 2023 where they were so much better than expected. Like, shout out to Patrick Graham. What a job he's been doing. A lot of people say it's Antonio Pierce's defense. No, sir. It's Patrick Graham's defense. And you look at this defense, and guys like Jack Jones have so much potential. He's got to keep his head on, right? Nate Hobbs has been really good at times in his career. I thought their linebackers played way better than I would have ever thought last year, and they've got those same guys, right? Can Tyree Wilson take a step forward and maybe be healthy and be ready to go this year? So I think that the Raiders defense is probably average, but last year they played like a really good unit, and a big question for them will be Antonio Pierce. Like, is he a legit head coach, or is he just like a guy with a big personality? Is he the next Dan Campbell? Or is he just like a one-year wonder, a one-stint wonder type thing? We'll have to find out this year. Offensively, I can't see their quarterback play being that much worse. Gardner Minshew, I think, actually increases their quarterback play, at least the floor, because Aiden O'Connell is still there. So rather, Aiden O'Connell is going to be their starter and better than last year, or he's going to sit on the bench and Gardner Minshew is going to play, and it'll probably be relatively the same because Jimmy Garoppolo was bad. And then, after that, they had O'Connell pretty much play the rest of the year. Devontae Adams is still there, still playing at a high level. Jacoby Myers was an awesome pickup last year. They've got multiple tight ends now. Brock Bowers is a real weapon that they can really, attack different areas of the field, move him around. He's going to be dynamic. I don't think they're going to miss much when Josh Jacobs left. I think Zamir White can step in and run it. The O-line, I think, will improve thanks to Jackson Powers Johnson, I believe. Jackson Powers Johnson? I always forget with the 3 names. But the offensive line is going to be downhill, tough, angry, powerful. So looking forward to this team playing. I'm really going to look forward to their style. I think there's a clear, evident style that they're going for. Power football, toughness, grittiness, Raider football. So I'm looking forward to watching them. They could be a little bit better than this, but at 25 is kind of where I land because their ceiling isn't extremely high this year until they find that quarterback. At number 24, the Minnesota Vikings, who are like the NFC's version of the Raiders. They just do not have a high ceiling at quarterback, but they have a lot of other elements that I really like, including a defensive coordinator that is going to make their defensive talent a lot better, just like the Raiders, right? So Brian Flores was unbelievable last year. The fact that he made this defense as good as it was last year is a testament to him being an elite coach in the NFL and should really get him more looks for being a head coach once again in this league. Because in my opinion, he was kind of screwed over and blackballed from that position. But anyways, I think that the defense is going to be better this year because they've added more talent. I think Blake Cashman's going to help them at linebacker. I think that Van Ginkel out of Miami is going to help them in the pass rush. I think that Dallas Turner is going to help them in the pass rush in the first round. I think that Jonathan Grenard is also going to add something. And then the interior, is fine. Like, they were really good against the run last year. They were blitz heavy extremely because they didn't have a lot of great pass rushers outside of Danielle Hunter. But I think they've got a more diverse pass rushing group now and can maybe rush like 4 at times and get away with it, can blitz when they want to. And I think their back end is probably going to be a little bit better as well. So maybe they won't quite perform to the elite level that they did on defense last year because teams won't be fooled by them as much. But I still feel like they're going to be pretty darn good, if not, better on that side. So the Vikings are interesting on defense. And then offensively, like, Sam Darnold has talent. Like, we know this. He can rip the ball. He can scramble. Like, yeah, he's a little bit missing something up here. But for 1 year or for half a year, I assume it will be the entire year. Sam Darnold is going to get to work for the Vikings. JJ McCarthy's going to sit behind him and learn and listen and wait and probably be ready to go in year 2. But if things go poorly, he might be thrusted in near, the first 4 weeks or the first half of the year. But you look at this offense and it should be relatively easy to run. It's a good offensive line. They play in a dome at home. They've got 2 really good tackles. Aaron Jones is running the rock. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Like, they've got a number of weapons here to work with. So I really like Kevin O'Connell calling plays, Brian Flores calling the defense, some of the aspects of the defense, including an improvement of the pass rush, including the offense having, a ton of weapons to work with. One of the most talented offense around the quarterback in football. So this is a team that I think is going to steal some games, upset some teams, be in a lot of games, but just the quarterback is going to probably hold them back from being a playoff team. But at number 24, I see a world where they're probably winning 6, 7 games, maybe 8, but they could also maybe squeeze into the playoffs if everything goes right and JJ's really good or Sam Darnold has a career year. Either of those things could happen and they could win 9 games and make the playoffs. So with their coaching, it could very much happen. At number 23, the New Orleans Saints. The Saints don't have a very high ceiling to me. Like, I can't see a world where they're winning multiple playoff games. I can't see a world where they're maybe even winning 1 playoff game. But I do see them as an average team. I just see them as an average team once again in 2024. I don't think they've made drastic improvements to either side of the ball. I think that they've made the necessary additions. Chase Young added to the pass rush is pretty interesting, along with adding Fuaga in the draft as an offensive lineman that can help them out. But the offensive line is like 1 injury away from being a pretty big disaster. And then the receiving core is like 1 injury away from being a pretty big disaster. Like, there's just aspects to this team that I look at, I'm like, this is a team that's still trying to win, and they're just not that close. Like, Chris Olave, I like. Rashid Shaheed, I like. I like that. I don't mind the tight ends, right? Alvin Kamara's only getting older. He's not the player he once was. The run game is just not that good. The offensive scheme is maybe going to be a little bit better, but how much better is the question. Derek Carr is just only getting older, and he's just not the same player, and he's just not that good anymore. And I just feel like he's just mid at best, right? Like, he's not going to uplift other people. You're going to have to uplift him. The defense, I think's got talent. I like some of the aspects. I think the cornerbacks are pretty good. I think that DeMario can still play, and the defensive line is better than last year. We'll see what Brian Brzee, that guy, can be in year 2. They've got some decent pass rushers, but like, to me, this team is just nothing better than an 8 or 9 win team. And that's maybe why I rank them at 23. Maybe they'll more realistically land around 18 at the end of the year. But to me, like, I'm trying to put together everything: potential, ceiling, floor. Where are they at? Like, to me, the Saints are just a middling team. They're pretty dull. I just don't see it. Now, Saints fans can argue with me all they want. I just don't know, man. They need like a new fresh start, a new coach. I think part of it is the coaching. Like, they don't have an elite coach by any means. They have one of the worst coaches in football in terms of head coaching. They have not an elite quarterback, just a middling quarterback. They have older talent in key positions. And I don't know, man. 23 is the Saints. At number 22, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are at 22. I think the Seahawks are a little underwhelming. Like, I expected to like the Seahawks a lot more at the beginning of the offseason going into this year, because I am a huge Mike Macdonald guy. I think he is arguably the best defensive mind in football now that Belichick is pretty much gone and retired and all that. So I think Mike Macdonald is the guy. And I just look at the team and I'm like, they're just missing something. Like, they're just missing something to me. Like, yes, I like their draft in terms of Byron Murphy. I thought that was a great pick early, and I think that's going to help their pass rush. And I'm intrigued to see Leonard Williams with Byron Murphy in the inside along with Draymond Jones. That's going to be explosive and dangerous on the inside. The edge rushers, they're all right. Boye Mafe, hopefully, healthy. Nwosu healthy. Like, they've got elements. I believe Taylor is still there. Linebackers, not bad. I don't mind the direction they went there in terms of picking up multiple veterans like Dodson from Buffalo, who played really, really well for Buffalo last year. How will he fit in Seattle? That'll be interesting. Secondary, Witherspoon's a stud. I think that losing Quandre Diggs, I think it's going to hurt a little bit. I don't think that their safety position is quite as good. I like Love a lot. I think that Woolen is inconsistent, so what will he be in this system? We'll find out. I wish they would have had one more corner to really rely upon on the outside. Not sure Michael Jackson is the guy, but we'll see. I think the biggest thing that's bugging me is the offensive line. I think the offensive line is just crummy. Like, and to me, I feel like the offensive line and the status that it's in is going to make the offense so much worse than what it could be. That's my opinion. Like, Geno, I think, is an average quarterback. If you put a good offensive line in front of him, he'd be pretty good. Pro Bowl type level guy like he was a couple years ago. Bad offensive line could make him a bad player. That's what I'm worried about. Can their run game actually work without an offensive line that's any good? Their receivers, like they've got 3 good receivers I really like. I like Noah Fant. I like Kenneth Walker. I like the skill talent, which probably props them up to 22. But with the defense probably being maybe like top 15, but not like top 10, that's probably where I'd project them to be at. Maybe they could be better than that. I might be wrong. Maybe McDonald is just that good. They'll be top 10. Maybe the offense can overcome the deficiency of the offensive line, and maybe they end up winning 9 games. Like, I could see that. But at the same time, I just feel like the offensive line is going to make their offense inconsistent. They've got a new offensive coordinator that is a college guy. How's that system going to look? There's not a lot of like familiarity for me with that. So not a lot of confidence for me with that. I just don't know with this team. They're interesting. And then I don't see like, I guess the elite edge rushers. I don't know. I just don't know with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm just going to leave it at that. You guys let me know. At number 21, the Los Angeles Chargers, who kind of similar to Seattle. Like, they're a really hard projection because Justin Herbert is awesome, right? Like, if Justin Herbert was on Seattle, yeah, I'd have him in the playoffs. If you swapped quarterbacks, I'd probably have the Chargers in the bottom 5 or 6. And Geno's not that bad, but Herbert is just going to make this thing potentially good, right? Like, you look at the offensive line and they can block. Like, I believe that Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are going to get their job done. And I think that their interior isn't half bad. And I feel like with a better run scheme under Greg Roman, they're going to run the ball fairly effectively. I think that Ladd McConkey will definitely help them. I think Palmer can get the job done. I think they've got enough receivers around an elite quarterback where he can prop up the skill talent for them looking better along with a solid run game where I could believe the offense is like 15th in the league. Maybe a little inconsistent because their receivers won't really be able to get open or separate or consistently make a lot of plays. But I think that Herbert can prop those guys up and prop this offense up to being, better than maybe it looks on paper. And then defensively, if they're healthy, which is a tough thing to say about the Chargers always, they've got good edge rushers. They've got Derwin James. They've got decent corners. Like, their safeties are pretty good. I can buy into the Chargers not being a disaster on defense with a change in coaching. And then just the Jim Harbaugh factor of him going everywhere he goes and improving this team organization. They could just have a much more professional vibe to them, which is what I'm really buying along with having an elite talent at quarterback. So the Chargers, I don't think have the potential or the upside of the Seattle Seahawks, but I just feel so good about the floor that Herbert and Harbaugh give you that it's hard not to rank them around the top 20. But if you put them at number 10, Colin Cowherd, that's where I'm just saying you're absolutely nuts because this team just doesn't have the talent in a majority of their roster, like the interior defensive line, like Corey Linsley potentially not even playing this year, like the receiving core, even running back is a bit suspect. So the Chargers are at 21, mostly due to the quarterback and the coach. But there are other elements now post-draft, like the offensive line, that I feel pretty good about. At number 20, the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Colts have an upside that is intriguing on offense. Anthony Richardson is a freak beast monster that I look forward to watching in year 2, although it will basically be year 1 for him. Offensive line is quality and I think reliable, which I'm excited about, right? And that makes me feel good. When you have an offensive line like the Colts with a good scheme behind it and Shane Steichen, you can run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. You've got a number 1 receiver in Michael Pittman. That makes me feel good about your floor, right? You've got elements of your offense that make me feel like you can move the ball most of the time. And then with Mitchell coming in as a potential high upside number 2, I'm very much excited for that. And then, defensively, I really like the potential of their defensive line for the first time in a while. Like, I haven't felt this good about the Colts' defensive line in quite some time. DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart. Now you've got Latu, who is my favorite edge rusher in the class, Kwity Paye, Epucam. So you've got a good, nice rotation. I think they also added Davis from Miami as well to the inside. So the linebackers are kind of underrated. It's the secondary that has me concerned. So there's just aspects of this team overall, like what is Anthony Richardson going to be? Is he going to stay healthy? You don't have Gardner Minshew anymore, so how's that going to look, right? Now, Jonathan Taylor will be there the whole year, you would hope. Their tight end position still not my favorite. I don't really know what's going on with the secondary receiver options. Will Mitchell be legit, or is he just going to be an issue? Is Josh Downs going to be there and reliable and consistent? I think he'll be a pretty good number 3, but is he a number 2 if Mitchell can't step up because Alec Pierce isn't? The secondary is just not that good. Gus Bradley, I'm not a huge fan of the scheme. So there's areas where I see the upside, but then there's areas that with the Colts always, it's like they're tugging me back. They're like, I can't quite buy in because they just didn't quite improve enough areas for me to buy in all the way. So that's the Colts every year. At number 19, the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are very similar to the Colts in terms of they did some really nice things that I really can get behind, but at the same time, they just failed to respond to criticism that I've had about their defense for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. They don't have a pass rush. Their cornerback group is very thin. Underneath A.J. Terrell, it is very thin. Their safety position is very thin outside of Jesse Bates. Their best pass rushers are ancient old folk home guys, right? Their linebackers are no names, but I actually think they're kind of underrated. Now, Raheem Morris could make that a lot better than it looks, right? Raheem Morris could really make this defense. All of a sudden, Lorenzo Carter's getting 8 sacks. I wouldn't be shocked, right? Raheem Morris is a legit defensive coach, and I think that Robinson is going to be a good offensive-minded guy, really running, kind of a offensive head coach, defensive head coach type of system, in my opinion. But what is Kirk Cousins going to be? He's coming off an Achilles injury, and you just drafted Michael Penix, so what does that really tell me about Kirk Cousins? How confident can I be in your quarterback if you just drafted a damn quarterback in the top 10 that's not going to play for 4 years? I don't know, bro. The O-line is pretty good. Bijan's a beast. Tyler Algier is one of the better backups in the league. Kyle Pitts hopefully be utilized better. I don't know. Drake London, I really like. Darnell Mooney, I like that pickup. But this to me is an offense that could be about top 12, right? Even if Cousins is just average, I think it could be top 15, top 12. But the defense is just how good are they really going to be? I don't know. Top 20 again. Last year they improved a little bit. And I thought they got good coaching last year. So how much am I really going to give you a boost because Raheem Morris is now there after what he did with the Rams defense that I didn't think was any good last year? So I don't know. The Falcons they just did a lot, but at the same time, they didn't do enough. After they got Cousins, I thought they were going to start shooting, going for it. And they're just not. It's frustrating. So at number 19, the Falcons, that's where I stand with them, right outside the playoffs type team for me. At number 18, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the draft and just overall the vision of the Bucs and just looking at their team and settling in on this division, I just feel the best about the Bucs and what they're going to be. Baker Mayfield, he's not coming off a torn Achilles. So I know that he's probably going to be decent. At least top 20. He might not be the top 12, 15 quarterback that he was last year, but top 20 sounds about right for Baker Mayfield, right? The offensive line, I think, only improved with getting an absolute stud in Barton at the center position. They've got arguably the best left tackle in football. Yes, I said it, Tristan Wirfs. They've got, I think, an improved right tackle position after I thought he was an absolute bust when he was playing guard for the Tom Brady teams. And Gedeke, I don't know how to say his name. Cody Mock is in year 2, so he should be better, right? Rashad White looked like a star last year, and they actually, got decent depth at running back. The wide receiving core is only improved, you would think, with Jalen McMillan being added, but Mike Evans is getting older. Chris Godwin is getting older. So, are they able to stay at that same level? I also like some of the other guys they have there. Cade Otton's not bad at tight end. Defensively, I thought they improved on paper. Yes, they lost some big names like Shaq Barrett and Devin White, but those guys were not the same guys. Kalijah Kancey, year 2, he was a stud in year 1. Vita Vea is a beast. Hopefully Hall can continue to improve. Whitehead being back, I think, gives them their safety look that they really want. I think that's going to be the best safety group they've had in a long time there. And yes, they lost Carlton Davis, but I'm not too concerned about the cornerback group. I think that McCollum can play a little bit. They do have still Jamel Dean there. So yeah, the secondary at the corner position maybe isn't as great. I also like the pickup of Thomas as a nickel type guy. So, and actually Britt is underrated. He was out playing Devin White last year. Their pass rush, Diaby, kind of underrated on the edge. Todd Bowles is a really good defensive coach. They're going to stop the run well. There's elements of this team that's reliable. You kind of know what Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to give you. Feels like their run game's only going to improve with a better center in there. Yes, they had to flip over another offensive coordinator, but it's largely staying the same with another Rams guy coming to town. Baker's going to be more confident and kind of in his groove. Defensively, I think they're just going to be pretty rock solid. Not great, not bad, somewhere in between. So this team just feels like they're not great, they're not bad, but they're somewhere in between. That's why I have them at number 18. I think they probably won't get as far as they did last year, and they might not even make the playoffs, but I still feel about them being pretty competitive, pretty easily there. At number 17, the Chicago Bears, who have a ton of upside, and there's going to be a lot of fans for them, and a lot of fanfare, and a lot of hype, and, I understand. They've got great receivers, and Caleb Williams is going to be very exciting for a lot of people, along with adding DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen trade, picking up Gerald Everett, picking up Kevin Byard, some big names, right? But I still don't really know what this team's going to be, right? I think the biggest area where I'm just a little bit holding myself from putting them at number 14 is the coaching is just kind of average. I don't think that Matt Eberflus is a great coach. I don't think that their offensive coordinator, I believe it's Shane Waldron now, is a great coach. There's a reason he was removed from Seattle. I think they're okay. They're okay. They run decent offenses, decent defenses. They're not really going to give you an edge each and every week. I thought Eberflus really upped his game last year, especially once Sweat came on board. But I kind of wonder if that's going to keep up. I like their linebackers. I think Sweat's a beast. And I like Jalen Johnson a lot. I like Jaquan Brisker a lot. I think Byard can still play to a decent degree. I kind of wonder about, the other corners to some degree. I kind of wonder about the interior defensive line. I kind of wonder about the opposite edge position. And I kind of say, is this just an average defense, or is this as good of a defense as they played at the end of the year? Was it the competition, or what was it, the weather? I don't really know. The offensive line is, I think, a little underrated, but they're not great by any means. I think that the run game will be solid, but not great. I think that the receiving core is really good. I think Caleb will be a lot of fun, but I also think he'll be very inconsistent. I could see him turning the ball over multiple times in a game, but then also throwing 3 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a wild circus with this team at times. So I think their ability to kind of play through their defense at times is going to be lost because Caleb is a little wild and a little bit, all over the place. So yeah, he could have games where he goes off for 350 and 4 touchdowns and they win 35-21. But there could be other games where he's just not good. He's taking too many sacks. He's getting strip sacked a couple times, and they lose not even because the defense played bad, but just because they turned it over and they played, their offensive line didn't play as good as expected. So I see the upside. I see the downside. So I have them at 17. I could see them making the playoffs for sure. I could see them having a Texans-like year, but I still wish they did more on defense to address the defensive line. I still think that I just need to see Caleb Williams. He is a rookie. So yeah. At number 16, the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville is just, to me, I think, a little bit forgotten. Last year, they were having a very good season, and then Trevor Lawrence had that injury, and they just were never the same team. I still believe that Doug Peterson is a good coach, and I like the addition of Ryan Nielsen as the defensive coordinator. As I discussed, I thought he did a good job with Atlanta last year, and I thought he was pretty good coming from New Orleans. And then Trevor Lawrence, you would think he'll be better this year than, let's say, a Caleb Williams as a rookie, right? This might be Trevor's best season in the NFL yet, right? And I like what they did this offseason in terms of they added a couple pieces to their defense, like Eric Armstead, for example. That's going to help their defensive line. I think their defensive line is low-key actually pretty good. Right, Trayvon Walker had a really good end of the year last year. Josh Allen is a stud. Roy Robertson-Harris is there. They drafted a guy in the second round out of LSU. Linebackers are athletic, a little inconsistent, but Oluwakon's really good. Secondary, I think they've got a real good safety in Cisco, a real good corner on the outside, one of the better ones in football. Savage was added to the mix. They did lose Darius Williams, but they added Ronald Darby, who played well, should be able to play the same role. They added a nickel corner in the draft. I think their defense is somewhere in the top 20. He may be a little bit higher. They could be a top 12 defense. I wouldn't be shocked by that. Their offense should be a top 10, 12 offense. The offensive line has a bunch of young tackles that should improve. The interior added a reliable veteran center in Mitch Morse. That's going to be an improvement there. Travis Etienne is healthy. Evan Ingram's a good tight end. Brian Thomas is going to give them a vertical X receiver. Gabe Davis is not a bad number 3 because Christian Kirk, he's really a number 4, right? And he at least adds more kind of speed and downfield ability than Zay Jones. But they still got, pretty good depth at receiver like Parker Washington. And when you really think about it, Davis is the number 4 because Kirk is the number 1. Ingram and Thomas will be the 2 and the 3. And then Davis is the number 4. And then you got Travis Etienne. So I feel like between the combination of Lawrence and Peterson, an improved offensive line, an improved defensive line, some nice additions to the receiving core and things like that, I think Jacksonville is a better team than given credit for. Because I think a lot of people think of them at the end of the year and they're like, this team isn't very good. But actually, they were better during the course of the year. They just had some bad things happen to them. At number 15, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are always tough because for the last few years since Big Ben retired and even older Big Ben, we don't really know what we're getting at the quarterback position. But we also do know that Mike Tomlin has voodoo magic. And at the same time, it's hard to rank them too low because all the time they just win 9 games. So it doesn't really matter, that's the thing. But what I can buy in with the Steelers, I'm actually excited to watch them this year for the first time in a long time. Because their offensive line on paper is really, really talented. It is young, but it is really, really talented. They'll have the best, most exciting left tackle prospect they've had in years. Broderick Jones will be in year 2, and I really liked him as a draft pick. And then also in year 1, I thought he was pretty good. And then their guards are really talented veterans. The center is going to be Frazier, who I think as a second-round pick, warranted pick, he is a good player, and I think he'll start right away and improve that position. That was a disastrous spot for them last year. Their running backs are one of the better tandems in the league. They've got a reliable tight end. What really kills their offense for me is the lack of reliable quarterback play from Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Either way they go, they're going to get pros and cons from both, right? Russ is probably going to protect the ball better. He's probably going to have a better deep ball, maybe more plays in the passing game, but Fields gives you an upside to your running game, which could potentially be the strength of your offense. So either way they go, I think there's going to be pros and cons. Fields holds on the ball too long, he's going to get sacked, all those things. But the receiving core, right, that's also kind of bugging me because George Pickens is really good. If they had Deontay Johnson, just that ability to like know they had a talented, proven number 2 receiver, I'd be a lot more excited for the offense. But they traded him and they went with a rookie in Roman Wilson, who could be good, but we don't really know, right? And then they added a couple of veterans like Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins. I don't know what they're going to be. Defensively, I think they're actually way better than last year on paper. I think that hopefully Minka can stay healthy, TJ can stay healthy, but Cam Hayward's still there. Their interior is pretty solid. They've got 2 awesome edge rushers. Linebackers are really good now. Patrick Queen, they added Peyton Wilson, my guy out of the draft, and they still have a Landon Roberts and those guys. And their cornerback group, Porter in year 2, should take a little bit of a jump as their CB1. I still don't think their corners are all that great behind him, but this is never a team that's had great corners. Tomlin finds a way to have a good defense without it, with the amount of zone that they typically do play. So I look at a really good defense here. I think it will be a top 10 defense. And then an offense that will manage the clock, a better scheme, a more like effective run game. I think more sense in terms of play action and the connection to the passing game. So I think the Steelers just make more sense as how they can be good than they have in previous years. So at number 15, I have the Steelers. At number 14, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are tough for me to rank because I look at some of their roster and I'm like, man, like they're so good at receiver. They're so good in terms of their play caller. Their running backs are explosive as hell. Like their defense, they've got really good edge rushers when they're healthy. They've got awesome corners, I think, with Fuller and Ramsey and then Holland at safety. They don't have a lot of holes. It's just like their holes are massive. Like their offensive line is terrible on paper. Like if Teron Armstead gets hurt, you've got rookie Patrick Paul coming in there. Austin Jackson's already a liability. Isaiah Wynn is a liability in terms of health. I don't even know who Robert Jones is. There's guys on this offensive line, I'm like, Tua's going to get killed. But then I'm also like, well, Mike McDaniel kind of does a good job of offsetting that with motion and the speed of the receivers and quick screens and all that stuff. And he'll have his smoke and mirrors approach, but against certain teams, it's not going to work. And then like the Chiefs, for example. And then, defensively, I just wonder how they're going to be up front. Are they going to be able to stop the run? Especially with those edge guys being injured, Chubb and then Phillips. They're good, but they're coming off major injuries. So Shaq Barrett and then Chop Robinson are going to have to take on bigger roles. It's not going to look pretty early. Their defense is probably going to struggle early because they're not going to be able to stop the run that well. They're not going to be able to pass rush that well. The linebackers are okay. The secondary is pretty good, but until those guys come back 100% healthy, I'm still worried about the interior of the defensive line, like how they're going to get dictated on that area. And then Vic Fangio, losing him, that's never a great idea, right? Like Weaver comes in, we'll see what he is out of Baltimore, but not super confident that that's going to be an improvement. So yes, on paper, if everyone was 100% healthy all the time, Miami is probably the 10th best team or the 9th best team. But when you consider all the different factors, and I didn't even bring up the potential of Tua having that injury history, it's just really hard to rely on this team. It feels like their ceiling is quite high, but they didn't have these glaring question marks that I felt like they didn't have this last year. And I wasn't even that high on them last year. So I have them at number 14. At number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys feel like Miami of the NFC in some capacity. A change at defensive coordinator that I think might be a good thing, but also might be a bad thing at the same time. Going from Quinn to Zimmer, there's a reason Quinn got a head coaching job because he was very good in Dallas, except in the playoff game where he got absolutely torched and it looked awful. But they still got a lot of talent on defense, and at least they're healthy, right? DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, they're going to be good, right? The secondary, Trayvon Diggs is back. He's going to be good. I like their safeties. And, Bland is pretty good. And their secondary overall, on paper, their starters, pretty good. Linebacker is a bit suspect. Interior defensive line, maybe the depth is a bit suspect. But the defense should be maybe not as good as last year, not top 5, top 7. but probably still flirting with the top 10, even with a change in defensive coordinator, even by losing Stephon Gilmore, even by losing, a couple pieces like Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler and guys like that. But the offense is still going to be really good. I just kind of worry about the offensive line a little bit. Now, they will have a rookie left tackle. He could be really good. Like, they could just coach him up to be Tyler Smith 2.0, or he could not be very good. He's a rookie. They've got a rookie center, potentially, in Cooper Beebe. He could be really good, but I don't really know. But I will say their offensive line has a lot more potential than Miami's. Like, Miami has a lot of older veteran guys or like kind of like 1-year contract type guys that are expected to play. This team has like young guys that could be really good and were drafted to be really good, or like studs, like Tyler Smith and Zach Martin are absolute bona fide studs, right? So the O-line has a certain floor to them, in my opinion, but the running back position is The tight end is pretty good. CD's a beast. Brandon Cooks should only, maybe be more involved this year, but Tolbert I actually think will be better than Michael Gallup. Like, I kind of like Turpin and Tolbert being in there. Dak is good, but will he be as good as last year? That's kind of a question because he was really good during the regular season. So I don't see them being as good as last year. I just think they have way more questions on their roster. They're not as deep in the secondary, although they did lose Trayvon Diggs. They're not as deep on the D line. They're maybe more kind of unpredictable on the offensive line. So there's things about the team that isn't as good or as reliable, but at the same time, they still have a ton of talent on offense and defense, a ton of studs on both sides of the ball, and they're still one of the more talented NFC teams. So I have them at number 13. At number 12, the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are just absolutely loaded, and the quarterback position is a huge question mark. So that's why I have them at number 12. When your most important player is arguably the biggest liability on your team, that is just difficult to discuss, right? Like, the offensive line, when healthy, is going to be a problem. They've got great guards. They've got a pretty good center. Their tackles, they've got like 3 or 4 that could start on like 50, 60% of the league. Even if one of them gets hurt, like, just plug DeJuan Jones in there and you're good. Njoku is a top 5 to 6 tight end, in my opinion. The receiving core is deeper and better this year, adding Jerry Jeudy to the mix. Cooper is still there. Nick Chubb is back and healthy. He's the heart and soul of the team. They've got deep running backs. If Deshaun's just okay, their offense with Stefanski running it should be top 15, right? If he's just okay. Now, if he's good, now we're talking this is a contender. Defensively, they're top 3. Like, their D-line is ridiculously deep and loaded. Better than maybe last year. Their linebacking position with Jordan Hicks, I think, gives it a certain floor that I didn't think it had last year. JOK is a good player. Secondary, they can play man in a way that few teams can. Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator. He needs to evolve, though, from late last year where they were starting to get shredded. So I kind of feel like Cleveland's a top 5 defense with an offense that has potential, but it's kind of unpredictable. So that's why I land them at number 12. At number 11, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are almost the opposite of the Browns, where they have a quarterback that could win MVP, and then a team that is like, I don't love a lot of the areas, but they're not bad in really any area. I would say that. Like, that's kind of the Bills this year. The O-line, they're not great, but they're not bad. They've got enough pieces there, like Deion Dawkins still protecting the left tackle spot, where I'm like, they've got a right guard that's going to be in year 2 and Osiris Torrance. I thought they made improvements at certain positions, and then you look at the receiving core where it's like, they're not good for sure, but Shakir's okay. I like Curtis Samuel. Like, they drafted a kid in the 2nd round in Coleman, who maybe he can play a little bit. They do have 2 tight ends that they could use. They do have a pretty good running back that can catch the ball. Like, there's areas where you could be like, yeah, Josh Allen could just uplift this entire offense and they'll still be top 10 because he's Josh Allen. And I actually felt like the play calling was pretty good near the end of the year. But they're going to be more power-based, more 2 tight end based, more run-based, and Josh Allen's probably going to have to run himself quite a bit. Defensively, they're always better than you would expect because McDermott does a really good job, at least in the regular season, of making this defense perform. Matt Milano will be back. He might be their best player on defense, right? He might be the second best player on their team, right? The defensive line, Rousseau is good. Oliver, I think, kind of become underrated at this point. Daquan Jones is good. Maybe Von Miller can play better, but they do have guys like Epinesa. They have a fair amount of depth. It's not an electric D-line, but it's not bad by any means. Linebacker position, I think, has 3 guys that can play. The secondary, I like the safeties. The corners, I think, are underrated in terms of Benford, Douglas, Johnson. So the defense, I think, will be top 12 because of McDermott. And the offense will probably be top 15, but I don't really know what to expect in the consistency of the passing game because I just don't know who the guy is. Can Kincaid be that? I don't know. But Josh Allen needs a dude, and he doesn't really have one. And it's not like he has Andy Reid calling plays. He doesn't have a Travis Kelce. He doesn't have an O-line like the Chiefs last year. Like, this is not going to be like the Chiefs or as easy as it was for them to, like, not have Travis playing at an elite level or not have a good receiver on their team, because this is not Andy Reid ran offense. This is not Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. Like, so it's interesting, but we'll see. At number 11, they still got Josh Allen. Entering the top 10, at number 10, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, shout out to you guys. I'm wearing my shirt just for you, just to shout out to Rams fans out there because you've been hating. But at number 10, the Rams. Now, for some reason, Rams fans took it as an offense that I was like, quote unquote, tearing them down, including Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and the team. But it was not the fact that Cowherd ranked them, in the top 10. It was the fact that he ranked them at number 4, I believe it was, over the 49ers and other teams in the NFC that I just think are better, played better last year, and have better rosters, and are just maybe like have more upside. Like the Los Angeles Rams, you look at their team, and the offense could be really, really good, especially if Cooper Kupp is healthy the entire year and he's locked and loaded. Like Puka Nacua is a stud, but now NFL teams know that, right? Like Williams is a stud, but now NFL teams know that. Like there's a certain degree to like, they kind of took a lot of teams by surprise because nobody really knew how good these players were. And then eventually they're going to catch on. But Stafford can still play at a top 7 level in the league. Like he's elite. He's absolutely awesome. Like if you're commenting that I don't like Matthew Stafford, I don't know where you've been all these years. But anyways, this is like the Matthew Stafford originator of content. Okay, but anyways, we're just going to continue because that's outrageous. The offensive line did improve with Jonah Jackson. The right tackle is old as hell. Still good though, right? Right tackle or right guard, really good. Center, not bad. Left tackle, not bad, not great, right? Tight end, old, not explosive anymore. But they've got good receivers. They've got Matthew Stafford. They've got a heck of a play caller and a coach in Sean McVay. And they've got really good balance, which is what I love about their offense. They can run it. They can throw it. They can play action. They can screen. They can do everything at a high level, which is what I really like. And they'll probably be a top 5 offense in the league as long as Stafford is there the entire year, which is something that I brought up in that video where I'm like, Stafford was a huge issue before the year. Like people thought he might get hurt and be done. Like people thought he might retire. So like, I'm not really projecting that because obviously I have the Rams at number 10, but it is a little bit of a concern. I'm just not really functioning it into the power rankings to a degree. But where I'm worried is like, okay, the defense is average at best. Like at best, if you're comparing them to the rest of the NFL, the offense is really good. They're going to be able to win a lot of shootouts. They're going to be able to win games 31-27 like they did last year. Like they almost won against the Lions, right? But the defense is still a problem. Like if Jared Verse is going to be your best edge rusher, that is a little bit of an issue. He's a first rounder. We don't know how good he's going to be. It's not like he's Von Miller. You know what I mean? And then the defensive line, they lost Aaron Donald. Okay? Like, yes, Kobe Turner's good. Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald. Okay? And it's not like they've got like a ton of big names on the D-line. They've got a couple of good guys. They did draft a kid in the second round, but I wasn't even overly high on him. I'm just going by my analysis. The secondary, Tre'Davious White, he is like a wild card. He could be there. He could be good, but he might not even play. Like he's torn his Achilles like twice now. Darius Williams is getting older. There's a reason Jacksonville cut him, although he will be reliable for them. I don't think he'll be bad. The safety position, they're okay. Like, you just can't compare them to certain other units in the NFL defensively, right? So, yeah, the Rams are a top 10 team because of their coach, because of their quarterback, because of their offense. But defensively, I think they're at best the 15th best defense in football. I can't see them losing their defensive coordinator, losing Aaron Donald, having the potential to outlast teams in the NFC and the NFC Championship. I think they'll win a playoff game. But beyond that, I don't really know. Like, they just don't have the ceiling for me on defense. At number 9, the New York Jets. Now, this is one where Rams fans will be upset because the New York Jets ceiling is insane, right? The New York Jets ceiling is Super Bowl. I really believe that. But their floor is also very low. So I'm sort of taking a side here, almost fully, right? The New York Jets are arguably a top 2 or 3 roster in the NFL, if not, the best in the starting lineup. You look at this team and the O-line has vastly improved. They just drafted a kid in the first round to be their 3rd tackle, right? To protect them from a Tyron Smith injury. Morgan Moses is now their right tackle, a reliable veteran who gives steady play. Elijah Vera-Tucker, when healthy, is really good. They've got a 2nd-round pick entering year 2 at center, and they added another guard in John Simpson. And they don't have bad depth at that position. Breece Hall is one of the 5-6 best running backs in the NFL, maybe even better than that. Garrett Wilson is a 1. Mike Williams is a very good number 2 when he's on the field. They added another receiver in the draft. You look at the offense, and yeah, Hackett has a very vanilla scheme, but Rodgers prefers it that way anyways. They will have a good running game thanks to their offensive line and Breece Hall, and Rodgers will be able to just be so smart and so decisive at the line of scrimmage that he'll get them in the right play, and as long as he is upright, they will be effective on offense. Not great, probably not explosive or top 10, but highly efficient, very good ball control offense that plays well coordinated with a defense that when it actually has an offense for the first time ever is probably going to be like top 3 in the league. Like CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams are a great linebacker duo. Quinnen Williams is an absolute stud. They added Hassan Reddick, and although they did lose, Huff, John Franklin Myers, I don't like that they got rid of him, but they've got Jermaine Johnson. They've got Will McDonald. They've got first round pick, right? They've got Clemens. They've got Javon Kinlaw, first round pick. They've got a bunch of guys, right? And then corners, they've got really good corners, including arguably the best in football in Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed on the other side, Michael Carter at the nickel, who's a good player. Safeties are a little bit suspect. I wish they would add a couple more depth pieces on defense to have them, one at linebacker, one at safety, just to give them more flexibility and depth. But there are players on this team that, thanks to the starters playing as much as they do, I don't even know how good certain guys are because I just never see them play. They might be really good, and the Jets might know this, and I might be wrong about some of the depth concerns. But this team's upside is immense. That's why they're at number 9. At number 8, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are a lot like the Jets in terms of their upside and their talent. But I have, certain concerns about things, especially with how things ended last year, right? Like, you can blame Matt Patricia all you want, but he didn't make James Bradbury just look like a piece of toast on the football field. He didn't, make these old guys look as old as they did. He didn't make this defense look as slow as they did. He didn't make these linebackers not be able to cover or run support. And it's not like they really improved that area all that much, in my opinion. Now, the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, I still believe he's a good quarterback. Wouldn't say elite, wouldn't say great, but good. O-line is very good, even despite missing Jason Kelce. I still think he'll be very good. Maybe not dominant, but very good. They have a great tight end. They've got 2 very good receivers. They've got enough at wide receiver 3. Kellen Moore, I think, will improve the offense in terms of giving answers to Jalen Hurts against the blitz, in terms of giving them and providing them more creativity in the passing game. They've been very vanilla in all aspects, including their Super Bowl season. They were so dominant at the line of scrimmage. They were so good at running the ball that it often didn't matter. Jalen Hurts needs to be more active as a runner this year to open things up. I think the offense will be top 10, if not top 5 in the league. Defensively, that's where I'm concerned. But I do feel like they've got a lot of talent, right? Like Carter is a stud. I think we know that. I think we know that Sweat is really good. I think we know that they've got a lot of high picks like Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, although I don't know if those guys are that good. They're high draft picks. They put a lot into those guys. Now, Quinion Mitchell, I think, will be very good. I think that Cooper DeJean will be good. I think Darius Slay can still play. I don't know what Avonte Maddox is going to be. I think they'll cut James Bradbury. I think that the opposite safety kind of stinks. Linebackers kind of stink. Huff, I think, will be good. Maybe not Hassan Reddick 2 years ago good, but pretty good. How does he play on every snap? He probably won't have to. So I look at this team and I say, I think they'll be a top 10 offense. Ball control, explosive. And then defensively, I think they'll be hit and miss. I think they'll have times where they look really good. Because some of it is like, some of their guys are old. Some of their guys are really young. Some of their positions are still kind of weak. And then, how does Vic Fangio put this all together? I do feel more, good about their baseline. I feel better about the coaching. So that's why they're at number 8. At number 7, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are at number 7. I've spoken at length about the Packers this offseason already. Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love. Jordan Love, I think, is going to be elite this year. Really, really good. I love the way he plays. I think he can not only run the system effectively, but then also add a little bit of flair on top of it. Add those touch passes off his back foot, right? Make those throws powerful down the field. I think this receiving core is only going to get better this year. They looked real good as first years and second years. Now imagine them as second years and third years. Hopefully Christian Watson can have his hamstring hold up because he's going to be really good this year. I think that Josh Jacobs is going to be a reliable guy for their backfield. Consistent, available, unlike Aaron Jones. I feel like they've got decent depth at the running back position. I feel like they always have a good offensive line, including their first-round pick, Jordan Morgan, who I think is going to start right away and play well. I think the offensive line could be just as good, if not better now, right? I think they're going to have more toughness, grittiness to their offense thanks to their running game, the offensive line, Josh Jacobs, Matt LaFleur evolving. And then they've got Wicks, they've got Reed, they've got Watson, they've got Dobbs, they've got all these weapons, Musgrave. They've got a variety of ways to attack you. So I really like it. And I love all their weapons to choose from. Defensively, I think they're going to be better because I think their coaching is going to be better. I think that McKinney is really going to help their secondary. And I love some of the picks they made at safety with Bullard, linebacker with Cooper to kind of fill out those final positions of need for this defense. Gary Van Ness in year 2. That's going to be fun. Preston Smith's still there. Clark is there. They've got Devontae Wyatt. A lot of high picks. Alexander at corner. So the Packers, they could be a dark horse to go to the Super Bowl. Wouldn't be shocked by that. At number 6, the Baltimore Ravens. I almost put them at number 7. I wasn't really close to putting them at 5, but 6 felt right just because Lamar. I just feel like Lamar and Harbaugh have a certain floor to them as long as Lamar is healthy. That 6 feels good. Like, even if I don't feel as good about this team as I did last year, and I felt like they really regressed in a lot of areas, including linebacker, including safety, including offensive line, including receiver, I feel like they've declined in areas. But I still think they have Lamar. I hope that Andrews will be available all year. Zay Flowers, I think, is going to improve. So they've got a good number 1, number 2 in the passing game. Likely, I hope they find a role for him as a number 3 or 4. And then Bateman can also hopefully be healthy and contribute there as a 3 or 4 as well. Derrick Henry is going to make their run game a lot of fun. But their offensive line, I just have a lot of questions about across the board, which is where I'm like, Ronnie Stanley, can he stay healthy? Right tackle, what's that going to be with a rookie there? Interior offensive line, how good are these players? Defensively, how good will they be without Mike McDonald? I brought this up before. I don't know. Probably not as good, but they still got good players. Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, like Roquan Smith, Justin Madubuike. They've got studs at every level, and they've got enough of depth on the D-line and the edge position. Like, I still think their defense will be solid, if not good, top 10. I just don't think it will be the best defense in the NFL like it was last year. So that's going to change things. And I think that their offense will be pretty good, but a lot of it will be on Lamar, and I just don't think Lamar will be the MVP of the NFL because things like that regress, right? So at number 6, the Ravens. Entering the top 5, at number 5, I have the Detroit Lions. This one was tough for me. I nearly put them at 4, and I actually had them at 4 for quite a while, but they end up at number 5. And the reason for that is I just don't feel as good about their defense as I do my number 4 team, and I don't feel as good about the quarterback as I do my number 4 team. But everything, else in terms of they're really good. They deserve to be top 5, if not top 3. The O-line is elite. They've got a number 1 receiver. They've got a stud of a tight end. They've got a running game that's really consistent and reliable. They've got an awesome offensive play caller. Jared Goff's a good quarterback. They've got a D-line that's improved with DJ Reader and Marcus Davenport. Aiden Hutchinson's a stud pass rusher. They've got secondary that's flexible, versatile, I think going to be improved with the first-round pick, the second-round pick, Branch in year 2, Carlton Davis. Linebackers are solid. The Lions are a really good team. I think now for them, the expectation is NFC Championship. How do they handle that? That's going to be the most interesting thing about the Lions. But there's not a lot to say about them right now. I've been saying the same thing over and over. It's just they've got a really good offense. They're going to be elite on offense. I know what I'm going to get there. And then can they maybe add a little bit in terms of can a receiver step up in those big games to take pressure off of Amon-Ra or Laporta? Can their defense truly take a step in the secondary for them to shut teams down, not just slow them down? So that's where they're maybe missing at number 5. At number 4, the Cincinnati Bengals. This is the team I was referring to, comparing them to Detroit. I think people forget about the Bengals. They feel like the forgotten team because of what happened last year with Joe Burrow. But let's not forget they went to the Super Bowl, right? And then they went to the AFC Championship and nearly won without an entire offensive line in that game. So, and they largely have the same roster. I think people were waiting for T. Higgins to get traded, and it never happened. So you still look at this team and you say, the offensive line is the best it's ever been for Joe Burrow. You've got the Brown Towers on the outside, and you've got Amarius Mims now as a third tackle. You've got a pretty reliable interior, led by Ted Karras and Alex Kappa. And then you've got an improvement at tight end. They re-signed all the guys they did, and then they added Mike Gesicki. I think Chase Brown is going to be a lot better than people think at running back, and then Zach Moss adds a little bit of reliability. T. Higgins with Jamar Chase is different, right? It's tough to handle. But then they also drafted Burton in the draft. They've got, other receivers that I think Irwin, he can step in and make some plays. Joe Burrow is a beast. Joe Burrow is a stud. Joe Burrow has that it factor, right? He's going to make everyone around him better, and they're going to be an elite offense. And then defensively, they're just they're gamers, man. And they don't have a lot of holes. That's the thing I like about the Bengals defense. They have pretty good depth at all positions, D-line, linebacker, safety, corner. They could maybe use one more veteran corner. I'd like to see them sign a Stephon Gilmore. I'd like to see them add, maybe another linebacker for depth, just for injury's sake. But you look at them and it's Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Sheldon Rankins, BJ Hill, Miles Murphy. They added 2 D tackles in the draft. That's a really good rotation. Linebacker, Wilson and Pratt is a solid duo. Safety, they got better, right? Von Bell returns. They don't have Jesse Bates anymore, right? But they got Dax Hill, and they signed Geno Stone, right? And then Cam Taylor-Britt's good, and DJ Turner's in his second year. I kind of like him. And Mike Hilton's a really good nickel. So, they've got all the pieces here to be a reliable defense. Not great, but solid. And they just have less questions than the Lions. The Lions defense, I feel, has more potential than the Bengals defense, but it's also I haven't really seen them play at a reliable level consistently, ever. And the Bengals, I kind of seen it before. And then I also know what Joe Burrow is going to bring along with their potential to win those big games against the Chiefs and stuff. So that's why I have them at number 4. At number 3, the Houston Texans. I really wanted to put the Texans at number 1, but I'm not going to be that crazy. So CJ Stroud, I've talked about this team. CJ Stroud might win the MVP. The Texans might be my Super Bowl pick. They've got the best receiving core in the league. Their O-line is solid. They've got Joe Mixon, my guy. They've got Dalton Schultz. They've got Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson on the edge. They've got Danico Autry. They've got D'Amico Ryans. They've got a really good play caller. They've got Tank Dell. Bro, I like this team so much. I have a crush on this team. I don't need to say anything else. At number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. You Rams fans can shove it. The 49ers on paper. I'm not talking about what they're going to be in reality. But all we know is on paper right now. On paper, this is probably the best team in the league. I just have too much respect for the Chiefs, and I'm going to keep them at number 1. But this team lost to the Chiefs in overtime, and Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles while running onto the field. Right? So, like, you know what I mean? Like, the 49ers are number 2. Brock Purdy is going to have a full offseason with Kyle Shanahan. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the league. George Kittle is the most well-rounded tight end in the league. They've got Debo and Ayuk, and they're not going anywhere. Ricky Pearsall adds another element to the offense that they didn't have. Trent Williams is still a stud. They've got the same O-line, but they just added pieces. The D-line, like, they're just as good. Yeah, they lost Eric Armstead, but Malik Collins is also good. Like, let's not forget they added him. Right? Like, Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd. That's a really good combo. I like Leonard Floyd more than Chase Young. They added pieces to the depth of the D-line. Like, it's not going to be much different than last year. Nick Bosa might actually play better than last year because, honestly, I didn't think he had his best season. Linebacker, they've got more depth with Devondre Campbell, and hopefully Dre Greenlaw can return to form. Hufanga is going to be back, so their defense is going to be faster, more electric in the back end, and they also drafted Mustafa, who's basically Hufanga 2.0, and the safety position, it's pretty much going to be the same, right? They could always bring back Gibson if they really want, but that wouldn't really be a big loss. Cornerback, I think, could be better because they didn't really have a good perimeter number 2 in Thomas, but I really like Green from FSU in the second round, and they also added, is it Yadam from New Orleans? I don't know how to say his name properly. But Charvarius Ward is a great CB1. Like, this is a very complete team, a very good team. This, to me, is more of a team that could go from losing the Super Bowl to winning the Super Bowl than a team that's going to lose the Super Bowl and then miss the playoffs. Like, yeah, maybe they lose the NFC Championship. But this team, let's not forget, has gone to 3 straight NFC Championships. Let's give them that respect of being the second most consistent and best team in football since 2019. The best team in football since 2019 is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, when discussing the Chiefs, I think that they've slightly declined in key areas, especially their secondary. I just think that L'Jarius Sneed, losing him just changes the defense completely. So I don't really know how good the defense is going to be, right? Like, it's still going to be good, but how good? Is it going to be dominant like it was in the playoff run? That is my question, the biggest question about this team. Left tackle is a complete question mark for me right now. Maybe they'll bring back Donovan Smith. Wide receiver has definitely improved. Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, that's going to help them a ton, even if Rashee Rice is in jail. They still got Pacheco. They got a really good, rest of the O-line outside of left tackle. Mahomes is Mahomes. Kelsey, Taylor Swift or no Taylor Swift, still going to be there. Andy Reid, Steve Spags, good D-line. Not a great D-line, but good. Like, they still are pretty much the same team. They lost a couple pieces. They flipped a couple pieces. They've tried to, keep mostly the same team. The only thing is, like, can they just do it again? Like, it's just hard. It's just really, really, really hard. And that's it. But those are my rankings. I know it was very long, but hopefully you guys really enjoyed the thoroughness of this video. Thanks for watching. Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Peace.